Hey everyone, welcome back for another episode of the Co-op Pod. Now, of course, you've got me here, your host Guru, and I am joined by another main host here, which is my good friend Nas. Nas, it's a pleasure to be back here on another episode of the pod with you. Now, for everybody who's watching, I first off want to thank you guys for coming back for episode 2. I hope you enjoyed episode 1. Now, this episode is going to be a little extra spicy. We've got a really awesome one in store for you. Now, to give you an idea of what's coming up, we have a bit of a dip back into a topic that we touched on in episode 1, which is Omega Strikers. Joe, I'll let you go a little bit more deeper on that afterwards here to give everybody a general idea of what we're going over there. But after that, there has been a lot of really big content moves happening in the Web3 space, and we're going to give you all the details on that because that's something you do not want to miss. And talking about content, me and Joe on a podcast, you better expect that it's going to transition into esports because there has been an equally large amount of esports moves happening in the space. So we're going to touch on a couple of really big esports announcements as well as some esports, just in general, esports collaborative moves that are happening that caught my eye and caught Joe's eye. And finally, we're getting to the spicy part of the pod. We're going to be going over a bit of a debate, a bit of a rebuttal that happened on Twitter between two huge Web3 public figures, influencers, whatever you want to call them. And that is something that you really don't want to miss. So either skip ahead. We're going to have timestamps below, so you can skip ahead and catch that part if that's all you want to see, or hang around. We've got tons of information for you. We're going to finish it off with a really exciting part of the episode. Joe, take it away, my friend.
Hey, everybody. Yeah, amazing intro. But yeah, so we're going to jump right into Omega Strikers. So last episode, we had a bit of audio problems. To be honest, it was quickly my dog going manic because of a neighboring cat. And what's amazing about what's happened since then is if someone we know in the space, I'm sure everyone kind of the content of Web3 is familiar with it also, Jonah Blake. So you can look for him at Real Jonah Blake. We want to be able to put his tweet thread here, but essentially he was able to package into an amazing thread a lot of the points that, you know, myself and Max were taking apart last week, right? A big part of that was, I think the title was very, very similar actually to what we said. It was what Web3 games can learn from the launch of Omega Strikers. And the meetup verbatim was pretty much that. So all the things that we talked about and I shared about what I thought was really amazing about it, but you know, Max put input there, was pretty much put into an amazing thread on Twitter. So we'll put the link in the show notes. And big shout out to to Jonah, his project as well, Real Third Web, amazing research and content out there. And for anyone who can't deal with the audio from the last episode, you can check that out. Highly recommend it. And I'm looking forward to what else he covers there and what we're going to talk about over the time, as Omega Strikers seems like a playbook to follow for sure. What do you think about it, Max?
I mean, there's not a whole lot to add. I would say that Jonah's an incredibly smart guy. He's a close friend of mine, and I actually think I'm going to be doing some content with him coming up. So keep your eyes open or ears open, whatever it might be, for announcements on that. But I think the big picture of what he's getting at here and what we're all getting at that I just want to summarize real quick is really that a Web 2 game ended up marketing itself in a way that is very similar to Web3 game virtues and values, and it succeeded wildly. And that's what we're all getting at here. So great thread to help explain that, and a really big project that I think both you and I are going to be following and covering quite a bit, Joe. And I'm really excited for it. I'm super excited for it because content creation is a big passion of mine, and I think content creation is going to be a really big forward-thinking move for a lot of Web3 orgs. And that's one of the things I think you and I are about to jump into, hey?
Yeah, exactly. I think to keep things on the same thread of thought about content, right? I think there, like Max said in the intro, there have been amazing moves related to content in particular, not just esports, which obviously Max and I are very, very passionate about, but just content creation in general. So I think if I can look it up here, so ReadyPlayerDAO, again, something a guild we're both very familiar with. I'm sure you guys have interacted as well with Rich or multiple capacities, us to join their esports tournaments. They just announced the signing of the second major creator, I think, since their inception, which is Alliestraza. I hope I'm pronouncing it right. So Alliestraza, I know of her basically because of Hearthstone. So I was a big Hearthstone follower. Really followed the content game and how the esport followed. And I know she was at the later stages of it a top competitive player. And I saw the announcement. They actually made, I don't know if you saw it, Guru, but we'll also link it in the show notes. But the announcement had a full-blown announcement animated video. You know, it was awesome. It wasn't just like, hey, we signed this person, very typical Twitter. They've really gone over the full announcement style done for creators or esports teams in Web2 esports and orgs, where they do a whole. Essentially, she's on a riding on a board and like this whole awesome animation. She gets the kind of like the signature helmet of 3D for ReadyPlayerDAO. There's all these like amazing mixed reality animation, and which is something we're kind of used to now, and people have been leveling up in Web 2, and we've seen now her doing that. So for ReadyPlayerDAO, this is also the second major name. I think less than a month ago, they signed Mystic, very known for Pokemon Go. And with Alliestraza's announcement, it's particularly about competitive and creator work in the Web3 gaming space. I saw that she was already, so obviously did a little digging, right? And she apparently has been playing Splinterlands, which obviously I think one of the earliest competitive card games that's Web3 based. I think I have a spell book. That's all I have, just disclaimer, in Splinterlands. But she's already essentially been there, and now she's. I think for me, she's a good example of somebody who's been in the line between both Web 2 and 3 in a natural way. And for ReadyPlayerDAO, I think this is a huge move. I think it's a huge move to be able to really work with bring a creator of her name into the space, do it in again, I think a more modern and level up type of way and an announcement. So I'm really looking forward to it. It's a big move. I'd love to get your thoughts, Max.
Yeah, so I've got some interesting, I guess you could say, trivia on myself and MTTM to bring up here in regards to that. So first things first, massive moves by ReadyPlayerDAO, and every interaction I've had with Rich and the team has been phenomenal. They're a group of people who are not coming in here to, to drag their feet. They understand that a level of professionalism, a level of performance is necessary to succeed in Web3 long term, and they're making sure that they meet that standard. So shout out to Rich and the team. Fantastic group of people. Highly recommend following their happenings as well. But let's talk about signing creators. You know what's funny? You were talking about how Allie's kind of been on that cusp, that boundary of Web3 and Web2. So was Mystic. And a while back, actually, Mystic and MTTM go quite a bit back. And I have some experience because we actually soft signed Mystic for some competitive sponsorship through MTTM last year in the real highlight of that first season of Axie Esports Grants. So we actually had Mystic running in the Influencer Cup for the Galaxy Cup, that big giving away a Mystic huge cup that they did. Mystic was actually playing for us, and he made it to the finals. He actually ended up losing to Momoko in the finals. It was crazy. He did so good, but it was great, right? And I remember I actually showed up on his stream when he was first getting into Axie and kind of gave him the lowdown on it and became close with him. And I realized very quickly that somebody of his caliber, even just showing some interest in the space, was a huge move. And this was about a year ago. Now we're seeing, it has grown, and he has gotten to the comfort level, not just him, there's more people out there that are getting to this level, the comfort level of officially, collaborating or signing partnerships with Web3 organizations. And this is a massive statement. I think that this is a lot bigger of a deal than a lot of people realize it is, because even just last year when MTTM was looking at fleshing out our brand, we were looking at signing some content creators, and big content creators that sit at, the level of Mystic, Allie, even another one that's really well known in the space, Ian Mercado. She's a close friend of mine and YGG affiliate. This is not an easy move to do as a Web3 org. It's very expensive. It requires a certain level of merit. This is something that if you want to take that step on both sides, as the creator and as the org, is a huge step for the space. So I'm very bullish on it. I'm very happy that this is happening. And to be honest, I am so excited to see how this maybe kind of works as a virtue signal for other creators to think, all right, these people didn't just get completely blacklisted by their followings. I wonder if there's maybe a chance for me to explore this and just see how that maybe has a ripple effect on more big creators who have an interest in the space. Because the one thing that I've noticed, I watch a lot of creators. I love content. I love streamers, especially league streamers, TFT streamers, etc. And I'm noticing there is a lot of collaboration, especially even brand deals and sponsorships that are connected to the Web3 space, and people don't even realize it. Some of your biggest streamers and creators are sponsored by crypto and Web3 companies, and their branding is all over their stream, and you don't even know it. Just wait till it becomes fully apparent. It's just going to be a massive shift. So I digress, a big tangent for me, but I'm a passionate content creator. I think it's huge moves, and I'm super excited to see how this continues to evolve.
I'd like to add to that, right? I want to touch on something you said. And I know, no shame or anything, the tangent. I think it's completely what we want to talk about, right? I think I want to touch on what you said, how hard a move it actually is, right? So you guys might know, so my company Metasports, we're also not only a content of our own IPs, but we also work as an agency. So we're an agency for a number of the guilds, creators. We work on campaigns with Web3 games. Actually, we should talk about it for MTTM. But aside from that, what I wanted to talk about was the move like this is not simple, right? So, example, we are an agency for some Web2 organizations who are rising in Southeast Asia. But the conversation to convince a creator who's really like has a big and loyal following Web2, it's a scary conversation. I've talked with a number of them. And it's a scary conversation for them to make a very prolific and public announcement with a Web3 directed org like ReadyPlayerDAO. I think, like I said, people underestimate how hard that is for them. Like, they have the risk of being completely hated or backlash, Reddit bombed, attacked for a move like that. And so, example, one of the orgs that we've signed, and I can't announce this yet because we haven't publicly announced it. The only reason that they were able to become so we're an agency, so we're not their management, very different from like what's happening with Ali. So we work with them for campaigns or distribution. The only reason that they were able to do this was the credibility that we were there and doing Web3 before 2021, because we were doing it and we worked with projects. We were very judicial about which projects we work with that weren't, I think more on the only money side, and that was the main reason why two or three of them said, okay, we know your story, we know you from before this. Our creators are willing to work with you guys as an org because of that. That's how they're very aware that their brand and their credibility, they could completely kill themselves if they did it the wrong way. Mm-hmm. So, like you said, like what you did with Mystic then, what ReadyPlayerDAO is doing with Alliestraza and with Mystic now, and what other orgs are slowly unraveling. This is the first of it, but I agree, it is a major move. So if some orgs or like traditional orgs were not afraid of Web3 orgs, this is just like, wow, ReadyPlayerDAO is a major player. Like, they're now a major content player, or they're making that initial foundation, which is not a small thing. Those are things that happen in private calls that you don't understand how difficult those conversations are. And that's a big deal, like you said, and I love that you mentioned it, right?
100%.
Yeah. So, I mean, again, I think we're going to see a lot more of this over the next 3 or 4 months, to be completely honest. I think people have talked to say there's a lot in the pipeline. I'm hoping MTTM as maybe as well, or anything like that. I think esports is already a big deal in itself. So I think that was not a small thing, right? I think moving on to the next thing, right? On the topic of creators and partnerships with Web2, Web3, we have another very interesting one, and now we kind of bleed over into something again, Max and I are very passionate about, which is esports. It was all over. The announcement was all over Twitter, and the guild, OlaGamesGuild, or you might know them as OlaGG. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, they're still a sub-DAO of YGG. They were the Latam YGG sub-DAO, but they look like they're carrying their own brand now in that area. Announced a huge partnership with Team Heretics, right? I think a team that you'd be very familiar with, or I think definitely have more knowledge about. They are a LEC and Valorant partnered organization. This is Heretics. And based on the announcement, they essentially said that this partnership would allow them, their organization, their brand, to explore the competitive Web3 gaming space. Right. And so my initial thoughts here is, for a long time last year I was being ridiculed or talked about as, esports and Web3, what does that even does that even make sense? Well, just the validation doesn't end, right? So this is happening. This is happening now. They didn't specify any game as far as I could tell. But for someone, Max, like you, who comes from very familiar with the League of Legends world, all of that, I'd love to get your thoughts on it and, the movement itself.
Yeah, well, I think the biggest thing to consider here, and it's something, if you ever watched the podcast I did with Sayori a little while back when we were in, actually in NYC.
Yeah,
Joe, when we met, I went to the podcast room. We were talking about the tiers of esports leagues. And one of the things to consider here to understand the significance of this, like the scale at which this moves, is that League of Legends is an S-tier esports league. Consider when people will label it as an S tier, that means it sits up there with CSGO, Dota. This is a top of the line professional esports league. And these brands have very little risk tolerance, right? Like, these are the kind of brands that they have so much that weighs on the side of their brand staying very strong and able to be a part of these S tier leagues. that seeing them make a move like this is pretty big. So I know in that regard specifically, that is a very big move. However, I think a big thing here that we're starting to see, and I'm actually really interested in seeing how this grows, it might even make me reconsider some of my structure as a guild, is that a lot of the groups that are making these big moves, RPD, Ola, which was a subsidy of YGG before, these are all that I can't remember who it was, but I remember somebody said the future of esports lies in DAOs. And I'm really starting to see a lot of this come together because, yes, last year people were saying, oh, esports and Web3, it's not going to make sense because there wasn't any established competitive gaming ecosystems. But now that we're starting to see that build, the next part is just, okay, can you officiate these gaming ecosystems based off of having the right brands be involved in them and competing in them? And that is slowly starting to happen. But for that to happen, esports is traditionally not cheap. Let's just be real. Esports is not a cheap industry to be in. It's not a cheap ecosystem. And it is not only not cheap, but it is hard to get funding for at times because it is known to be an ecosystem where very few do succeed. It has a lot of, I'd say, caste, like a disparity between the people at the bottom of the barrel and the people at the top. And this, just from a business point of view, for anybody who's out there, makes it very hard to pitch that to funding. So if you're trying to fund an esports group, it is super, super difficult, actually. A lot of people are struggling with it. But now all of a sudden you introduce the DAO concept and things start to get a little bit more realistic because now you are not, institutionally funding from VC or from different institutions or different grants or launch pads. Now you get to fund things through a little bit more of a collective Web3 perspective, which is the DAO structure. And this does actually make a lot of sense to me. So I'm slowly but surely coming over to the side that we may actually see DAOs be one of the biggest turning points for esports to become a big thing in Web3 because that collective funding just seems so much more realistic because for esports, what is one of the biggest keystones in it? Well, it's passion, if you ask me. Yes, it's expensive. Yes, it's hard. Yes, at the end of the day, it is a very unique opportunity for only a few people to succeed in. But what brings the people from that bottom line to the top line? Well, it's passion, if you ask me. I think you need to be passionate enough and crazy enough in order to stick with it to hit that top of the success level, right? So I do actually think this is starting to open my eyes and maybe even more people's eyes to the idea that some of these big moves are really being led by the DAO structure, and it might actually solve a bit of the issues that current esports startups and esports brands that are not at Gen G, 100 Thieves, TSM level are having, which is getting that initial funding and support to start a brand. But yeah, that's just my take on it. I think, again, there's so much more. I could tangent on esports forever, but I am really interested to see how this turns out because I know we had the Guild of Guardians announcement before, but we kind of came to the conclusion that was more of like a brand move. This may actually be more of a competitive esports move. So that has definitely got my attention.
Agreed. And I think for what makes it different, right? I think obviously I have been very zoned in on how esports is kind of coming into Web3. And I think we've kind of been seeing two opposite sides of the possibility, right? So it's mostly been DAOs or guild, like pseudo DAO guilds concepts, focus on Web3 games and being competitive there, right? We have also seen some more like a crypto DeFi, right? And we're also seeing a bit of the esports traditional orgs, let's say Team Secret, making Team Secret Gemini, kind of dabbling in. This is the first I've seen that has been, arguably OlaGG being a sub of YGG in association is a huge deal, right? So they're a top considerable guild there, and some like Heretics, who's part of S tier esports circuits. So this is the first I think of like double high level on Web3 and Web2 coming together. It's not, hey, you can clearly see where the one side draws from, right? For example, now Esports, if you're following now Esports, amazing. They have a CSGO team now, a Dota team, a Pokemon Unite team, but that's a very DAO-focused structure into that. And then you see, again, traditional going in there. And this is the first I've seen that was like, we are both clearly at a high level in both sides. And we are teaming up. I think we're going to see more of like one power side going to the other, but something that I would consider about equal magnitude of relevance from between both spaces. This is 100% something to watch out for. I don't know, maybe it's a thing that maybe, like you said, as a guild owner, I think maybe a lot of them might be thinking now, oh shoot, should I be starting my own or should I be trying to now maybe start something new or a partnership with an existing equal level, existing org brand, right? right? I think it changes a bit of like what the options are, and I love that this happened out of I mean, theoretically out of nowhere. Um, so I think it's very sexy, right? I think it's very sexy. It's very interesting, and we're 100% going to be watching it. But I can't like. I'm hoping they join some of the esports tournaments. I don't even know they didn't announce any games, but I'm very excited to see like, do they do a kind of a tradition, a web, what Web3 game did they go in first? Right? Yeah. So I think that's pretty much my thoughts on it. It's very interesting to watch out for. We can maybe even have another episode just about some of this esports stuff. I think it might be interesting enough. I do want to touch on one other thing before we skip to the next docket. I know you brought up Guild of Guardians, and I wasn't able to put it in the original note, so this is like, okay guys, out of tangent topic, or like added thrown in the docket. They just announced this, so Guild of Guardians just announced a specific space with a representative from Team Liquid. So we called it. Right, so all of a sudden it's just going to be, so maybe they're going to do a rollout where they have a talk with each of the teams. I don't think it's going to massively change the esports side of it, or that it's more of a brand move, but we're talking about that amplification last episode, and here it is. Right, it's actually happening. And I wanted to, any thoughts on that before we move on to the next thing? I thought it was like a good call out from us.
Yeah, no, I think it's really interesting. I think you called that on almost perfectly, but not much more for me to add. I'm just going to keep my eyes on it. I've got notifications on just for that reason.
Okay. I should do that actually. All right, so next thing in the docket, we got here Axie Esports Grant number 3. So we'll get into it real quick. I know the end of AxieCon, which talked about last week, I think there's a clip of Zayori announcing the official I think it was at the time 2.4 million in total value for the esports grant number 3. That is obviously a huge deal. The first one pre-announced before this was Method, who had I think 100, who has a team format tournament with 3v3, $160,000 on the line for this circuit. I think it's a longer circuit, around 3 or 4 months. I'm very grateful to be one of the ones with also a pre-approved grant. So LSL is on season 4. So we are also one of the few ones who, I think only again 2 before this grant was announced, that we were allowed to announce a part of the official circuit of the grant. So we have at least, well, it might even go higher, but at least an $80,000 tournament on a single player format, which means that individually players take home even more. We have 8 of the best guilds in application mode right now to compete. And that doesn't even include the rest of the 2.4 million that goes into the first 2 quarters of next year. So huge deal, very interesting, obviously very proud to be a part of it. I'm very excited to see more of the guilds and more of the teams compete with Origins and balance matches coming out. I'd love to get your thoughts on it and how, it's insane, $2.4 million in the next half a year.
Yeah, I think, so here's my thoughts on it. First off, you said there's a bunch of guilds who are in application form, right? Or like application status right now. Yeah, I'd have to say MTTM is definitely on the in the war room right now, preparing everything. We're going to try and take one of those castles. But to move forward, I think, so this is how it really stuck out to me. League of Legends competitive gameplay has always been very physical. It is traditionally a form of esports that brings teams to an environment, an arena, etc. It's always been IRL. And this is one of the things that I think really stood out to me to see a grant of this scale, is I finally felt like we might start to see a little bit more of that, because AxieCon really showed the value of what having something like an IRL come together in-person competitive event experience was like, and it was phenomenal. So one of the things that I'm really excited about, and I might even actually be in talks with a few local North American organizations and leaders, is potentially trying to spearhead some of the more IRL stuff, especially around Axie, because I do think that there's a big opportunity here. As far as the grant goes, it is a huge sign of support for the esports side of Web3 gaming. And I know, speaking with Zayori a lot, esports with Axie has always kind of been segregated from Sky Mavis itself. Sky Mavis is not the one in charge of Axie Esports directly. Axie Esports is actually kind of a small team. I don't know if you saw the announcement Zayori made, but it's a pretty small team. So this is something that, Zayori and his team have been working very hard to push, get results for, and we are starting to see it come to fruition. I remember the first esports grant. To be honest with you, I I saw a lot of it not being used correctly. And I think that actually created, and you probably can speak to this, Joe, because you work professionally in this space, but there was a lot of people who came in and they really didn't deserve to make the grant. Let's just be real. There was even some misuse, etc. But as is the case with something that is in that early phase, it's super elementary, it's super infantile, there's going to be issues. But now, as we start to see some of it refine out, we see what floats to the top. Let's use an example here. We start to see where the successes lie. And I think that this grant is going to be a lot more dialed down, and we see it based off of the sheer scale of individual numbers. When I first saw that method tournament get announced, I thought it was a scam. I was like, who is this? Like, what is this? And they're copying method like the old WoW guild. Like, no way, what is this? Somebody's getting rugged here. But then, of course, everything comes and gets officiated. And I'm like, oh no, it's really not. It was just so unbelievable that it ended up being the reality that I could never believe. Now we start to see where I guarantee you this esports grant is going to be less large scale in like spectrum, and it's going to be more dialed down on the high performance, high refined, high capability organizations, events, leagues, etc., that really bring a lot of results. And then I could just imagine what comes after this, but that's my thoughts on it. I think this grant is going to be a lot more of a quality over quantity grant now that we understand, hey, we went quantity, we got some information and some data from quantity. We've now got a better idea of what quality looks like. Now let's double down, get that support and funding behind quality, and see exactly what we can do with it. I know that Zyori has always mentioned that he likes to do a bottom-up approach to esports compared to top-down, which is a way a lot of growing games will do it. They'll kind of fund everything from the top and just hope that they can develop it themselves. I think this is kind of that next phase of bottom-up, where we're going to see things get a little bit higher up, a little bit closer to the top. So yeah, really excited. LSL, I can't wait. I know you guys have been killing it. Like, one of the leagues that everybody talks about. I really hope that we get a chance to be a part of it. We're going to do our best to make that a reality. And then as we go forward, I know we got, I think we had 2 people qualify for the method, like the MMG tournament. Not a ton, because we didn't know about it until the final qualifying round. I was like, oh no, okay, we got to get some people in there. And we like stuffed everyone in there. I was like, oh guys, this isn't good. But anyway, I'm really excited for it. And I think it is a show of support for esports, which again, you have to know is a statement from Sky Mavis, which is the entity that obviously owns and builds and developed Axie Infinity, that goes beyond just Axie Infinity. This is its own other development of an industry that is a vertical to Axie Infinity. So really big thing.
Yeah, I want to touch on a few things that you said, right? I think the scale, like you said, number one, I think would be, you mentioned the first grant. Obviously, I can't, there's a lot of things that a lot of organizers I had problems with. I mean, obviously, we come from a very, again, we've been doing this for years, so it's very comfortable for us to do it. We understood. Obviously, I was frustrated. You understand, like we wanted to go balls to the wall with the size of Axie because it was big, right? There was the Galaxy Cup and everything. But when the grant came out, it was very clear, and I talked with Zaire all the time, that he didn't want to do a bottoms up. And at the time, I was very frustrated. I've told this to Zaire. I was like, we already have the traction. Some of us have the proven traction to be able to do this on a higher scale. But over the last 3 grants now, it makes sense. It was really to flush out a lot of the unprofessionally done ones, right? And I'm not saying this to diss on any competition, because I don't consider there's so much room to do the grant as competition. That's not it. What I say was that because there were actually a lot of grassroots who actually reached out to us, to me, who over time have actually helped structure how they propose grants. They asked a lot of basic questions. I realized there are people who want to do tournaments who don't have the experience. They think it's, I can run a tournament. But there's broadcast production, there's tournament organization, there's scheduling. It's really an entire production, right? And I think that this esports grant number 3, to give you a scale of how, what it meant to be pre-approved, right? We have been, I probably can share this, I don't think Zero will kill me. We have been talking about our being involved in this grant since, when was I in Vegas? The first week, I think, of May. Wow. That is almost 4 months ago, right? That is the earliest that we were kind of like talking about it. We mentioned chat, and we had a first real meeting about it. Just because, again, we had proved ourselves from Grant 1, Grant 2, had been, actively proposing and everything to get that prepared just for pre-approval. And like you said, it is not simple, right? And now, I have maybe three or 4 different orgs I'm helping out to advising for how to structure if they want to take it now from a grassroots level. They want to get, if everyone who hasn't seen it, read the grant. It's very well structured. It's major status, minor status, I think amateur, and then there's grassroots. And these are different prize pool levels, different ability levels, and people who are asking me about how do we want to get to the next step? How do we do that? What kind of proposal do we need? Does it make any sense? And to your point earlier about having there being IRL, it was very cleverly done. I think the major ones require a LAN. If you're going to get that $150,000 above, you require that. We actually still might, and I think even the minor requires consideration of a certain amount of players being on LAN. We are actually also on that road to be able to have. For Alpha there, we're working on possibly getting that up on it. Also just because of the market, but we're on the road to be able to also possibly have a LAN for LSL. So
Nice.
first I was saying, scary to see it publicly, but I promise we would do this publicly more. I replied to something that Jonas said about building publicly. And our entire goal at LSL is like that, to level up that next step. And I think for Axie in particular, it's allowing organizers and other organizers to be able to do that. So for those who actually care about Axie, I really want to encourage them to try if they want to get to this side of the business. And it's, it's not a joke. It's a huge, like you said, it's almost feeling like it's its own part of the Axie community. It is almost not like you don't have to be a part of everything else that's happening to be able to build foundation here. Over long term, I think that there are orgs that will be able to do maybe multi-ownership. We're exploring shared ownership of LSL over time, over the next year or so. But that would not have been possible if the exact format of bottom-up didn't exist. And I'm really hoping some other games kind of take a look at this model. And 100%, I was absolutely skeptical about the model of the Axie Esports Grants and everything. But now having kind of I told my team, let's go with it. Let's grow with it. And I think it's now turning into something that's, I think, allowing people to kind of it's an opportunity for a Web3 native kind of hopefully, continues in a Web3 native kind of structure using the blockchain and the assets itself. So I'm very excited. I'm looking forward to a lot of the other orgs also pitching or the ones we're advising as well. So I think it's a huge validation.
That's awesome. I feel like we're going to have to get together on even just a private call and chat more about that, because honestly, I feel like you've made a very good point about a lot of people, myself included, right? Like I come from esports, but I'm a player. I'm not an organizer. And I will say there's always been that part of me that does want to go to the next level, but it can be difficult sometimes for us to imagine that without the right support. So yeah, I mean, regardless, I think it's a really, really amazing and noble thing that you're helping a lot of people out. And I also think that it's really important for other people to realize that it's not just you. Like there's other people out there too. I highly recommend, just to add on to it, beyond just myself or Joe, if you are interested in anything Web3, realize that this is a community-driven initiative. Go out, go on Twitter, go to Discord, go and connect with people. Make an honest attempt to reach out to people, show your curiosity, show a genuine curiosity and some desire to actually add value yourself. And I guarantee you that people, like Joe, like myself, we're going to be there to support you. Like I myself, in the areas and the verticals where I can support, I'm hungry to support people. I want to see people succeed. I want to see the space succeed. So yeah, I wanted to throw that out there for anybody who's listening. If you're kind of sitting on edge about, hey, I really want to get more involved in Web3 or this or that or esports, go reach out to people, go make it known, and you never know what's going to happen. I made a little bit of a tweet on Twitter a little while ago, and I said, you're one faithful encounter away from a life-changing opportunity. And I truly believe in that. I think, you just got to put yourself out there. You got to go connect with people. And the more you do it genuinely, that's the kicker, genuinely, the closer you get to that life-changing opportunity.
No, I agree. I think you have that thread. I hope I'll link, we can add two things. So we'll add the esports announcement grant on the show notes. But I would love as well, we will put I think that was the post-AxieCon thread you put, right? And I want to be able to put in the show notes because I think it was excellently put, props to you. But I think when I tell some people, I saw a DM, I think it would have been maybe one of the early, the legends in these crypto Twitter before I joined, I think it was Born Elon or Lupify, and somebody tweeted you wouldn't believe the amount of deal flow or opportunities that come from just DMing. And like you said, the amount of opportunities that I've been able to explore in this space in Web3 and gaming just because of DMing people, cold replying people with ideas is insane. I want to say that was the most understated powerful tweet. Maybe I can find it. Understated powerful tweet and point that you made, Max. It's like, you're one DM away from an amazing opportunity if you just don't.
Yeah.
But if you don't reach out, you're never gonna get it. Like,
Never gonna get it, yeah.
you got-
And it's
I-
tough.
I-
It is
it's-
tough. Let's just be real. Like, you're gonna struggle. You're gonna write and delete that message 100 times. But the more you do it 200, 300 times down the line, you're just gonna start hitting send.
Yeah, I think that, and I'll say that 200 is not an exaggeration. Not at all. Like, I definitely DM'd a ton of it. Thankfully now, I think you and I, at least in the space, have more or less, I think people will reply. But at the start, it was really just, here we go. Just, to pull it out of your gut. Maybe because we also have sales experience a little bit less, but it's worth it. Like, it's absolutely worth that. Okay, but we'll put that in the show notes. It's an absolutely interesting thing, and I encourage anybody who's trying to build in the space to reach out to us or anybody. It will really, really help. All right, last thing in the docket, a little bit juicy. I might not do a good job of summarizing essentially what happened because it's very difficult. I hope we can kind of like parse this together. But so Brycent essentially tweeted that Play to Earn is dead. Yes, we're on the topic of Play to Earn again. It's been a year later and here we are. But I think we want to bring this up, and I'd love to pick Max's brain on it because essentially it kind of turned into a dramatic thread between Brycent, obviously someone who's built on Play to Earn, growing his popularity there, and also Cuckoo, who was also like a Southeast Asian or Philippine face for Play to Earn, going on a bit of a thread battle related to Brycent's statement. Hopefully we can bring it up NAS in the show notes, but essentially I'll just read out the core tweet that started it, right? Was, Play to Earn is dead, period. It's been dead for quite some time, period. This is great. It means more sustainable models that are not cash grabs will rise to the top. To continue the thread, he said, you're much better off not perpetuating P2E and requiring a higher standard from games. This is how you reach mass adoption, right? And a lot of attraction, a lot of replies on that, and I think there was a less than favorable reply from Cuckoo related to just calling it out, right? Some pre-context before I want to pick on Max's brain here and his thoughts, and before we dive into it, right? Mm-hmm. So Cuckoo replied. I guess the funny story was I was actually chatting with Cuckoo because we're working on a campaign for something, and all of a sudden he says like, I don't think Cuckoo killed me about this. He just said, "Be right back." And I couldn't understand why. And he said, and he basically, and I found out later. He's like, "Oh, here," and then he links me the thread, and I'm just like, "Okay, we can talk later. Sure, just go have at it, and I'll go do what you have to do, and we'll talk again later." And I kind of like slow follow the thread, and for anyone who will link the thread in the show notes, it's actually quite hard to follow because they do reply to each other in different parts, and there's clearly some parts where they were also talking in DMs about certain items, calling each other out for not DMs, attention, and I think a year later, it's an interesting time to talk about the Play to Earn word or the nomenclature. I heard that someone described it as that over time, and I think honestly, I think it was kind of healthy thing to talk about for them, and for maybe even for this space. But before I put my spin to it, Max, I know you've also had many things to say. You called out a lot of things related to the terminology or the timing, right? I'd love to get your thoughts about it and kind of like pick your brain, and I'll give my thoughts for sure. But what do you think about people fighting about the term Play to Earn now? How does it affect games where we know they're at this stage? Give it to me.
Yeah, for sure. Well, okay, tangent alert. Just got to understand that. Anybody who knows my professional writing knows that I wrote a very, significant piece on Play to Earn and why I felt that there was, and I didn't say Play to Earn was dead. I wasn't getting that clickbaity. My piece was the problems with Play to Earn and why we need change. And this came a while ago. I must have wrote this like 8 months ago, right? Because I was one of the initial pushers against the pushing of Play to Earn near the end of last year when it was really hot, right? Like you had guilds running huge funding runs. You had all the biggest influencers, Brycent included. He was one of the biggest pushers of it. I'd say that, majority of his brand was built on top of the Play to Earn model. So I feel like this is one of the things that really stood out to me. However, here's the thing. Between Brycent and Cuckoo, this is what I just want to bring out because I know them both. I don't know Brycent as well as Cuckoo, but I know them both, right? Both of their brands have been very, very heavily, motivated, structured, and built on top of the foundation of Play to Earn. They both come from it. So both of them are very passionate in their own ways. Now, I think where one of the big disconnects in here comes, and this is why I think there's so much emotional, structure, emotional ties to their opinions, is that where Bryson's play to earn passion kind of was a little bit of a tragic, destruction of his brand because of just unfortunate choices, maybe some investments, some, allegiance to certain games at poor times, one of which anybody who knows me, came to be at the beginning of this year and was a pretty hot moment between me and him. This. I'm human. I understand it completely. I could imagine that this would associate a lot of negative tension and feelings towards play to earn for somebody like Brycent. Whereas Cuckoo did not have that the same way. Like, you think about Cuckoo's current personality, his current success, who he is as an individual, as a content creator, he never really had like a tragic destruction or downfall that came as a result of play to earn. He's consistently come to the top. He has consistently moved forward, and he's really passionate about it because of just his whole brand being so associated to it. But now, here's a really important thing, and this is why I think Twitter arguments are so important but terrible, which is I bet you that a majority of the argument stem from miscommunication. And that's why even after the thread and the back and forth, you had a statement from both of them saying, hey, we had a chat. It was great. We came to conclusions on things. Nothing but love here. I think that's almost exactly like, verbatim, but what Brycent said. And it makes a lot of sense because here's the thing. When you have two passionate individuals emotionally exchanging their opinion on a heated topic on Twitter, and here's the thing, because I've been in this situation, you have hundreds of other people on Twitter putting their opinions in, commenting, putting likes on one person's response over another. Like, it is a public discourse that cannot ever be resolved well. I swear, it never gets resolved well in public. So I think that's why, especially Cuckoo, I saw him like almost demanding it. He's like, hey, if you want to talk to me in DMs. I'm done on public. Like, I don't think he did it in the greatest way sometimes. He might have used a few heated words, but either way, I understand it because I'm the same way, right? I've had a few exchanges with people on Twitter, and it's like, I just don't continue. I really don't. I remove myself from the situation, but that's because I've just learned to deal with it that way. And I think a lot of people are probably learning this the hard way and will continue. So just accept it if you do. You might make a fool of yourself on Twitter, but hopefully, you guys can understand that no matter what side you might be on, if you did follow this exchange, you can understand that a lot of it was emotionally charged between the two because both Brycent and Cuckoo are super passionate about it. And their success literally came majority from play to earn. So I could just imagine that they have so much emotion and passion tied to their opinions of it. But let's talk about play to earn. This is the big part. Yeah, I've talked about, their differences. Beyond Cuckoo and Brycent, play to earn is something that I think psychologically is associated to a lot of negative outcomes in people's minds, especially over the last year, just due to the fact that a lot of people initially got involved in Axie for play to earn, bought into Axie, not even just Axie, a multitude of games that followed the Axie model afterwards, and then learned a lot of hard lessons. Lessons that, and may I recite here, because I said it last time, would have been learned another way if not in play to earn, because everybody who is invested knows you learn a hard lesson at one point in time. But either way, they invested into it, they made decisions, and they learned lessons. And I think this is why a lot of people will look at play to earn and the immediate feeling. It's almost like when you smell something and a taste immediately pops into your mouth. It's that synesthesia. They have that synesthesia of that bad feeling. So there are a lot of people who are pushing for a change of terminology, just like with NFTs. They're pushing for a change of terminology to try and clean the slate. And I can respect that. I do think that there is some psychological support for that. And I think that's one of the things that maybe Brycent was trying to get at a little bit more with, hey, if we stop using these buzzwords and we start pushing for, just Web3 gaming sustainably, we might get somewhere a little bit more successfully than just kind of piggybacking on these buzzwords and these growth hacks to try and make Web3 games profitable. It's not about profitable, it's about successful, right? So I do think that my opinion on it does kind of stem on the side of, I do think that a terminology change could be healthy. But really, I don't think playing anything is the terminology change we're looking for. I think, we really succeed when we get to the point where Web3 games are just games, right? And I think that's where I come from. Jonas said this as well. I think that's a really big point of his that I like. He says, yeah, we're Web3 games, but like, when are we going to be just games? Same with Bored Elon. Bored Elon is such a it's just gaming advocate, and I love it because he's like, no, it's just games. And I love how he's always out there. He's just like, nah, you don't gotta use whatever buzzwords you want. They're just games. And I'm like, all right, I love this guy. That's exactly what it is. So yeah, that's my thoughts on it. I think the biggest thing that I take away from this is that we have two huge figures who personally, both of them are probably going through a little bit of a brand identity crisis because the foundation of success for both of their really successful brands is gone for the most part. You can't just capitalize on engagement and clout and watch to earn of play to earn, gaming anymore and just get free engagement, free numbers. Like look at Brycent. He's got 200,000 followers, and I will say, not all of his posts get the engagement I would expect of a 200,000 follower account. And I think this is a result of a majority of his following base coming from an industry that he is no longer supporting, right? So I can understand both of them are probably going through this in their own way. I'm even going through my own, so I totally understand from my experience. But yeah, I just think that's my thoughts on it. I think there's a lot that can be learned by following both Cuckoo and Brycent, though, especially if you follow them objectively. Like, look at what they've gone through, listen to what they talk about, see what they've experienced and how the struggles or challenges that they're experiencing, they're going through. And then be the wise man who doesn't have to make the mistakes to learn from them, but learn from the mistakes of these other people who are around you. And I think you'll have a better chance, especially as a creator or a personality in the Web3 space, understanding how to make a more sustainable brand for yourself as well. So yeah, a little bit of spice. I'm allowed to because I'm an influencer at the end of the day. But there we go. Joe, you can take it away and de-escalate it from all the heated viewers who are listening to my emotional take on the situation.
Oh, really? I was about to turn it up to 10, man. No.
Oh, there we go. Get it.
No. I think I'll try not to, but it's difficult not to, right? What I like to do about this, and I love a lot of the things you said, I'll touch them on as to build my thoughts on it, right? But when I go through these things, a lot of what I try to digest it, right, came about the two things. One, it was about the actual term. It was more about the actual term than anything, right? And then the other one was that I feel like what's missing, like you said, Twitter will just destroy any, I think, valuable discourse a lot of the time, right? I think just to quickly jump ahead before I go back to the meat of it is that I also fully believe games are just games. They're only Web3 games. I was in all of our meetings with clients and stuff. It's in 3 years, Web3 games will be Web3 games. They're just the games, right? But to go back to the meat of it, I think what's missing. When I try to digest this in a logical manner, is that it's missing a context of time, right? There's a lot of things that are a problem with this. Challenge in trying to digest this because of the challenge of no lack of where what happened and what play to earn was at different points in time, right? And so I'll break that out into my thoughts there, but I think as well what we're seeing today is what sounded like a battle between where play to earn should fall in understanding and conception today, and on the two extremes. Brycent is obviously, like you said, fully in the other end. It should never be used. Trash it. It's not good if you're a gamer, your business. For Cuckoo, it's like, there was nothing ever wrong with it. Right? There's nothing ever wrong with it. I think it got taken out of what he believes, and was what it originally was for him. And for many people, it started very early on. I go back to the time. And I think he's defending the point that it was not because the term is wrong, and maybe there's a way to have it still be a part of it, and not be just maybe it moves on, but historically it's not the bad association, right? Mm-hmm. So let me break that into the time. I think, like you said, I definitely agree. There is a lot of, especially with the entire market going where it was, pay to earn has left a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths, right? And it's just especially there are a lot of people who spend a lot of money in it. Now, I want to put it into the context of time, right? Like you said, I think that they both had meteoric rises then, at a certain point in time. But a little bit before that, when the Play to Earn document came out, I was part of. I discovered Axie in 2020, and Play to Earn was already a term. And what I think most people don't understand or might not understand, I want to give some justice to the side, right? Was that Play to Earn was a term before it became the documentary term. And I come from Southeast Asia. I don't want to lie and say I'm of an economic class, thankfully, but a lot more privileged than a lot of my countrymen in the Philippines and more. Right? But Play to Earn in the very, very early days felt different than it did on the rise. In the timeline of where Brycent was rising, and it was rocking it up. It was such, I would say, like, I saw a lot of my countrymen when it wasn't worth, SOP was not worth what it was, just finding some different opportunity. I mean, it wasn't even about the SOP selling. It was just like, oh, I can breed and I can make money from games in a legal, compliant way. Wow, that is what play to earn meant at the time. And Cuckoo was the only person that could watch at the time. It was only Cuckoo and Kagi. They're the only content creators in 2020
Yep.
about Axie, right? And I'm thankful for it now. But so when I say contextualizing, when I try to understand and put myself in Cuckoo's shoes, what I understand is that is the version of play to earn that he is fighting for, what it meant, right? And then, so we put it in that context of time, that I think was what original, and most of us, like you saw the documentary, right? That is the version that made sense to a lot of us. And then when you put it to the version that rocketed after, that is the evolved understanding of play to earn that I think leaves a bad, synesthesia taste in our mouth. Because now you had essentially the association with the over leveraged spending on it, unwise use of capital on it, and just the association with that. And the reality is, I think many people agree that it doesn't need, that is what stuck because that's where a lot more people saw it. Yeah. And I don't think, I fully agree that is, I try to put myself in their shoes and I see, the thing with Brycent, let's just spice it up, whatever. I think that the delivery of the tweet was an attempt at evangelism that is obviously aligned with where he's going, and which works. But I think that he mentioned something later. It's like he's not trying to create engagement, and I think let's just be honest. I don't think that's true.
No,
evangelizing
100%.
is about evangelizing is about engagement and helping people understand what you want them to see or what you want to think. So let's be honest. That's what that was. And so for where it makes sense, yeah, I when I put him in his shoes, I think that it could have been more straightforward, I think, or been more candid or have candor about that. And I don't think there's anything wrong with it, right? I think that the synesthesia, bad taste in your mouth, makes sense to talk about. And when I put myself in Cuckoo's shoes, I want to defend what pay to earn meant to me and my people, right? What it meant for that point in time. And it was completely out of his control for where the spending went for it. So I understand where it comes from. I don't know if it's the best strategy to keep it, but I can empathize, again, maybe because I also have for the same nationality and I saw it happen beforehand. But that's the two extremes. And none of that gets justified in the Twitter thread. Like, you don't see any of that across. Like, no. It just gets completely just trashed along the board, right?
Yeah.
And so they say that the best meme always wins. I think play to earn is a meme. And I think that the core, what they're fighting for is, what does play to earn get remembered as? I think Cuckoo's fighting for the play to earn at what he remembers it, what it's for. And I think, obviously, Brycent's fighting a different battle, which is the play to earn, which was an over-leveraged time. And so that's my take on it. Like, it's a no-win situation, and you won't. I don't think either or really matters. It's more of like which will make sense to do. And I think at the end of the day, like anything, terms have a life cycle, or nomenclature's life cycle, and I hope that it will be a better sample size of what play to earn would have meant in time. But I'm probably going to concede that it's likely that the monetary aspect will be more glaringly remembered over time.
Yeah, but I want to jump on and say something as somebody who's not, Filipino nationality. Like, I'm Canadian. I come from, like, my ethnicity is German and Romanian, right? So I'm as far away as possible. And I will say, when you talk to, Gabby or Cuckoo, because I've had very deep conversations with both of them, and they come from way back in the day. When you talk to people who were rooted in what Axie was before that parabolic, jump to scholarship, euphoria, let's call it, it is different. You completely feel a difference of their passion and understanding and communication of it in comparison to the people that you talk to afterwards. I've talked to both. I'm not going to shy away. I can be honest with you. I was earning hundreds, if not thousands of dollars an hour doing, consulting for people who wanted to start breeding farms for scholarships and this and that. And like, of course I was doing that. I saw all of these people coming in. However, I've also had a chance to speak to the people who were there before. And I think you do a really good job of explaining that because, there's this idea of the winners write the history books, right? Well, unfortunately, the winners were the people, or at least in this case, the majority were the people who got burned by the scholarship model due to the hype cycle spending on the financial opportunity in comparison to what it was before. So I think it's really important that you bring that up because that is a really, I don't want to say anything bad about anybody, but I will say that at the end of the day, Brycent's labeled himself a content creator, an influencer. That's what he is. He is a media-driven, he is a clout-driven individual a lot of the times. That's why he probably tweets so many times a day, right? It's what he does. It's what he's into. I feel like there is an intention of that evangelization that comes with this expectation of engagement and, becoming an icon on the other side of it, which is a little ironic. I'm not going to call it hypocritical, just ironic. But, and I think, again, where Cuckoo comes at it, because I've had a chance to talk to Cuckoo before, and like it is really passionate where he comes from. When he talks about play to earn and what he stands for and what he's trying to do, like even when I asked him about the NOS course that he made, right? Because that was a really controversial thing, and some people didn't really stand behind it. They're like, hey, what are you doing? Why are you trying to like over monetize this? Why are you doing it this point? And I was like, hey, man, like, what's up with that? And he was like, that was not my intention at all. He's like, really, it's kind of almost when you talk to Elijah about his course and some people look at it and they think, well, what? Like, dude, why are you milking more money out of people? It wasn't the intent. Like, it really wasn't. And you can tell when you talk to them, like, they're human too. People make mistakes. And sometimes the intent behind why you do something does not always equal the results or the outcome of it. And I think that's a big thing that happened here. Completely manifolded by emotion and Twitter publicity and, that drama. But yeah, I think it's a really big thing. I'm happy you brought it up because even for me, sometimes I forget it, even though I've been around in Axie a similar time to you. End of 2020 is when I got in. I wasn't as connected to the scene. I was super outsider. I started making content same time Elijah did. So I was kind of in the same boat as him, me and Elijah and Dave. And then like Brycent and the new gen came around and then we hit parabolic moon and like everything just went crazy from there. I couldn't keep track of everybody coming in, but yeah, no, I really like that you shared that because I think that opens a lot of people's eyes and I want to double down on that. Again, the intent does not always equal the outcome of something. I don't think that, the intent of that conflict was exactly what the outcome of it was. So I would take a moment as an individual observing it and just try and be objective about it. Take it with a grain of salt and be like, hey, don't hate anybody from this argument. They're just people having an argument and just let it go. Like, just be a spectator, maybe get a little bit of that tea, enjoy it because it's funny sometimes to read it and then just move on, right? Don't pass judgment on people based on that small exchange.
Correct. I think I'll leave a closing thought, right? I think that Web3 poses a lot of challenges to creators because of the financialization aspect of the gaming. Right. Now you can say that there's a lot of regulation related to having, say, you're a sponsored partner, having put ad on your, I think it's the US and the UK in particular, you have to put like ad. Like it's regulated, like advertising, right?
Yeah.
And, for a lot of other countries and areas that is not regulated, but you kind of like, there's a lot of respect related to those who are disclosed if they're a creator, just being paid or not. But Web3 just puts that entire thing on a different scale of hyperdrive because, these people are investors now too. They buy into the game. They buy assets. You don't know if they're not being paid traditionally, but now they're making money in assets that's being given. You have no idea. So I think that I really like what you put. I want more of the creators, people to understand these creators as well. Take a step back because no one also has a playbook for this. None of them have a playbook for this. No one had to do this. There's no right and wrong to like in traditional creators, it's like, because we make deals for creators all the time like that. It's pay plus disclosure plus maybe product payment or service allocation. Here, you just like, there's no playbook. These people invest in the game before the campaign or sponsorship even happens, right? Mm-hmm. They've bought assets, so it's like there's no, there's literally, it's so far from a playbook and a very controversial thing to have finance involved. So I think I love what you said. I think I'd love to end with that. Like, these are two individuals. Everyone here is going to the space should be responsible for the way they digest information from people who are influential. Even us. 100%. Like, as business people, as people who are early or able to talk, and you get to meet all people behind the scenes, you should take what we say, which I do. Max and I said that we're very dedicated to be transparent about what we say here. But our advice, I'd say, like the advice I'm taking away from what Max said is be very conscious of what content also you were taking in, what you were believing, how you should read it, especially for creators, right? I mean, I'm with that. I think that's a great way to possibly close this out and to
100%.
for that topic, yeah.
Let's do it. And with that, I think we can close it because we went maybe a little long, but I knew this one would because we had that spicy topic at the end, right? And I hope everybody who was listening or watching as well, I hope you guys enjoyed it because, you know, when me and Joe brought this up, literally we came to conclusion on this like today. and we're like, okay, well, we're not prepped on this. Let's just wing it. And I hope that we brought a lot of value to the people who are listening or watching, or who knows, maybe even, hey, if Brycent or Cuckoo, one of you guys are watching this, you know, just want to express out there, much love, you guys. You know, we're not trying to say anything negative. There's no intentional, diluting of someone's brand here. We're just talking about things. So that all being said, let's wrap it up. Joe, as always, thank you so much. It's so great to be jumping on here and chatting with you. Everybody who is watching as well, thank you all for the support. If you haven't yet, especially if you're watching this on YouTube, make sure that you like, subscribe as well, because we're going to be putting these out weekly, so you don't want to miss one of these episodes. Check out our socials as well. We'll have all of the socials as well as all of the show notes and links to anything that we brought up in the actual description or show notes themselves. So check those all out. Make sure you do all your own research, not financial advice. Got to give you the whole spiel. But with that all being said, thank you all once again for the support. It's amazing. This is the Co-op Pod. We're slowly but surely bringing this together and building it publicly with all of you. So we wouldn't be anything without all of you. Thank you once again. And hey, until next time.